Well, Derrick, I want to start with something that's on everyone's mind, and of course, that's a collective bargaining agreement. Not that you have any answers; you're not in charge of it, unfortunately, or it'd be settled already. But I've been hollering about this for weeks. This is one of those times where, in my opinion, the whole both sidesism should never enter the conversation because Rob Manfred is, and he's working for the owners. I get it. But he's so determined. They're all so determined to just be. It's just so hard line on this. Then very, very, very reluctant, or even perhaps unwilling to make any concessions that matter. So, what is Manfred hoping for some kind of Lee surrenders at Appomattox ceremony? I mean, what does he want here? Where you crush Lee's army and. There's no retreat. You demand a surrender, and they just come crawling. I mean, what is that? Is that his end game? I'm being a little facetious, but not much.
No, I wish I could think of the name of the author, but a guy who writes a lot of boxing spent time on the chess circuit, which of course has St. Louis ties, right? A lot of great chess going on here and everything like that. And I heard his description and read part of his book, and he was talking about how chess masters don't just want to win, in part because they have so many draws. They want to crush their opponent. They want to make their opponent just crestfallen. Like they lost so bad they can't breathe. They have to slink out of there. That it's not enough to get a knockout or a win. It's you want to leave damage.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure that Manfred is a chess master, but man, he likes to win.
He sure does.
And he has won a lot. And he's in this job because he wins. And, this is why he is the commissioner of baseball, is because he has won time after time, advances for the owners and made more money for the owners at the negotiating table. This is his background. As he is he negotiates CBA, and he's quite good at it. And he is also flanked by an armada of risk management specialists who are increasingly, have backgrounds not just in baseball, but in data crunching and finding edges. And that is what has brought us here is CBAs that were clear wins for the owners, in part because the players wanted, quality of life concessions, right? Like you think back a few CBAs ago, and one of the things that the players wanted was more off days during a schedule, better travel, less getaway nights in one time zone when they had to cross country to play early the next day. And the owners are like, cool, yeah, you can have that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, let's put that in there. But in the meantime, we're going to attach this draft pick here and create a circumstance where teams then hyperinflate the value of draft picks, suppress the middle class of free agents, just absolutely render, just absolutely reduce the kind of salaries that those players can produce or can pursue, all at the same time where teams now realize that they can get the production from an aggregate of young players, that is a collection of young players, all at the minimum, for less than paying one veteran for the entirety of a season. And so you think about it, like Manfred has had big wins, and owners have benefited greatly from those big wins. And he's in this job, in part because of DeWitt's advocacy of him. DeWitt was the chairman of the group that sought Selig's replacement and championed Manfred's cause. He's there to win, and that's what he wants to do.
And it's interesting to me because I understand the tactic too. I do. Let me put aside all of our concern about what the damage is doing to the game and the fact that baseball's not on the stage at all. Baseball's got some problems, and the time that the Super Bowl ends, that's when baseball just kind of moves front and center and then starts to take over. For at least in some parts of the country, where people are not NBA fans or necessarily big time NHL fans. But anyway, they've sort of vacated the stage, and it's not good for the game. So the overall health and fan approval of baseball is going to be hurt by this, as it is every time. It usually bounces back. But I understand the tactic. You know, you're going to stall. You want to put pressure on the players. You want to make them sweat the closer they get to. They don't start getting paid until the start of the regular season. So the more you can drag it out, the more players will start to sweat, and then that's when you can sort of hammer out agreement there are more on your terms. So my question for you, and we're seeing a lot of stories. I know Ben Fredrickson wrote a column about it today. Columns and stories like this are all over where good baseball writing happens. That players seem very unified and very dug in, and Manfred's tactics, if anything, are making players more determined to hang in. However, do you think they'll crack as Manfred and the owners obviously hope, maybe even expect they will, as we get closer to spring training, closer to the start of the regular season? Will they crack? It's easy to say now you're unified and you're dug in, but do you think that will last?
I think it'll last for a while because they've done a firewall a little bit. So they're not just unified in messaging. This is also the first work stoppage for Major League Baseball in a social media age, where you can have players reaching out like they have on Twitter or through other social media means. But they also collected a war chest with millions in it to then kind of, I don't know to give out in case of this leaking into the season and costing players salaries. So the union has a war chest where players can draw money from that if they start, dripping into an area when they would normally be paid. So there was preparation on that end to at least last for a while. Now, is that going to satisfy everybody? I mean, there are guys, Scherzer, there's $300 million guys on that executive committee. That zero looks a lot different when that check doesn't come for those guys. But they've also been very vocal, and they've also been part of collecting for this war chest. So I think the strength will be there for a while. I think they're also emboldened by what we were just discussing about Manfred winning so much. They want to win some. They're competitive too. And, they went out and hired Meyer, who's now leading the negotiations. They're going to follow him. He's a guy who, depending on who you ask, is demanding, can be colorful around a table, but also wants to gain ground for the players after, years of not getting it. So I think they are fortified, and I do think that they have some stamina that and it's not reassuring for me to say this. I get that, but I do think that they have some stamina to go in. Let me put it another way. I think they do have the stomach to lose some regular season games if they think they can get gains for later on. It's not ideal. It's at a point where if they lose too much of the regular season, for example, here locally, that may cost Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina enough starts to set that major league record. That could cost Pujols the at-bats to get to 700. But I think they have the stomach for missing some games. I think they do as a body.
Yeah. Derrick Gould's with us, the great Derrick Goold from the Post-Dispatch, STL today. Please follow him on Twitter at @DGould. Yeah, I look at the team. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and I'll try to be not as windy with it. I apologize. I tend to look at things just from a local angle, maybe too much. But it seems to me the Cardinals are a team that would have a lot to lose by the significant interruption of spring training, and then also just spilling into the season and maybe having a shorter season or whatever bad scenario unfolds because of what you mentioned. I mean, things like Wainwright and Molina pursuing that record. Cardinals also have high hopes for Nolan Gorman and Juan Yepez as far as guys that could be playing a major role or significant role. It doesn't do any good to have the routine disrupted there. Yepez is one of those 40-man roster guys that can't work with anybody. Right. Even in terms of fan relations, I mean, the Cardinals have had their issues there. I mean, yeah, it's better than most places, but I had Rick Hummel on last week talking about this. the Cardinals they have more work to do than usual in terms of getting that ballpark filled back up again. And
absolutely,
I think the Cardinals have a lot to lose here. Like in terms of the hit, I think they'll take a bigger hit than a lot of teams.
I tend to agree. I think they were just gaining some ground as far as ticket sales and everything like that last year because they had the mix of not having full capacity, not having any tickets to sell for 2020, not having full capacity to start last year, and not really having a team that captured the imagination of the area until late. And they never really got the benefit from that 17-game winning streak when you think about it.
Right.
Because, it was there and gone, and their postseason was over in one day. Really one inning, one pitch. And, it happened really fast, and they have not been able to capitalize at all on that momentum. If anything, they threw up a huge speed bump by firing Mike Schilt immediately after the season, and then haven't had a chance to even do much to promote their team this winter. They've chosen not to in a lot of regards. So you've gone now months without Oliver Marmol talking, which is just, that's just bonkers to me.
It really is.
It's like someone froze time over there, and everything that they gained in those closing weeks of the season, right up to the time when Taylor hit that pitch, and even really afterwards, they win 5 Gold Gloves. They set a record in that regard. That Nolan Arenado speaks so highly about wanting to finish his career, and he doesn't do the opt-out, which we knew, but still he did that officially. There was momentum there for some really good vibes, some generating a lot of interest, and for them to broadcast and try to share their optimism for 2022. They think they have a really good team. Several of their rivals think they have a really good team. Most of baseball kind of feels the National League is vulnerable, especially if, the Dodgers aren't able to kind of put a rotation together. They don't have a complete rotation at the moment. So I think when you look at it, the Cardinals had a lot going for them, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
Right.
And, come spring training, it's like Jurassic Park. They're going to have to try to find the DNA in the amber and get that T-Rex up going again.
And, and that's the other thing I left out, and you brought him up. I mean, we all agree, that Oliver Marmol is a really smart guy, and he has been prepared for this job as much as you can prepare someone. Maybe, obviously, not to take over this quickly, but that's just how it's happened. And so we're not saying that he's like some helpless little toddler who's got to learn everything, but he's a very young rookie manager. And I don't think when you have a rush job of a spring training, if you have much of a spring training at all and you have all this chaos, and we all know that the Cardinals, to their credit, are really into instruction and teaching and squeezing full maximum value out of spring training. We saw the evidence of how well that works with the improvement in their defense and their base running. This stuff hurts, man, and it really hurts when you have a rookie manager trying to establish his credibility in this huge new role that he's inherited. It's a pretty big deal, I think.
I'll make my point real quick. Is that Marmol's run spring training before? He was big on coordinating the abbreviated accelerated spring training of 2020 as they put together, a camp when it was really one-on-one instruction. So he's a big part of that. And then the other part is they got Schumacher as the bench coach.
There you go.
And Skip comes with, obviously, he's got a head start on knowing what the Cardinals want to do because he's been through it. He's also run, he's been part of spring training for the Padres. So I think that gives them a bit of an edge. I think you're right, though, as far as what a condensed spring does for as far as players making a changing the team's mind. A lot of times a condensed spring just has to be validation of the roster that the team wants to have. It's not any sort of test of the roster they could have because they won't have time for young guys or young pitchers or, like a Nolan Gorman to make a lot of noise because they need to get the guys ready that they have signed and they're counting on. And so I think you might see a lot of cases where the roster is rather predictable and there's not much room for surprises.
Derrick Goold with us here for a few more minutes. Always enjoy our conversation. You wrote about it today, and the timing's good. It's always good just to read about baseball and the Cardinals at STL today and, in the print edition at the Post-Dispatch. But I wanted to ask you about your piece today. The Cardinals are going to focus on adding relievers after this, or one reliever, maybe two, who knows. But do you see any other type of pursuit? Or do you think it's going to be most of it's going to be laser focused on the bullpen and bringing in an impact guy or two?
I mean, they'll look at left-handed bats. That's something on their mind is a left-handed bat, either to be a DH or to come off the bench. Right now they kind of have Newtbar in that spot, and they see Gorman in the future there, or whatever trickle-down effect it has if Gorman's in the lineup. But overall, I mean, they'll look at it. They'll also see if anything else kind of develops there, because there's going to be such a mad rush. What are the offers going to be like for some of these players? So, I think they'll look at that in those terms, trying to figure out if there's a deal to be had. But it'll be what will it be? It'll be judiciously shopping and keeping an eye on the left-handed bat side of the market.
And that's interesting too, because there will be some left-handed bats out there.
Yeah.
You were do you have any sense before the lockouts set in and then the communication blackout? Do you have any sense of who they like? I mean, you mentioned that they reached out to Joe Kelly. You also mentioned in your story
early on,
that it wasn't substantive at the time. They didn't go deep into it yet. It was sort of a preliminary thing, and Ryan Tepera's name has come up a lot. I mean, so do you have any way to rank them in terms of the interest level?
I think there was concerted interest in Tepera. I heard they were linked to them, confirmed that they at least, did have conversations with him. They had that focus on trying to get Garcia, who then ultimately signed with the Padres. They had other conversations going, but the lockout arrived right around the time that, they would have kind of accelerated those deals. I mean, had the winter meetings happened, then they would have come out of there with one of these relievers. That it seemed to be that was sort of the timing, but the lockout happened and those conversations didn't continue, and they didn't get a chance to accelerate with some of them. I think, Selman is somebody that they'll look at, who became a free agent when he was non-tendered. There's a handful of guys kind of in that group, including some guys who might want the one-year deal to bounce back, and a couple guys who you could then add in addition to the one on a minor league deal, and it might just work out where, they do have, in brief appearance, they do have really strong outings, and they go on the roster when the 60-man injured list becomes available, and they become a factor like Neshek did. It's just there's a lot of depth out there, Bernie, so they'll have a lot of options, and they can get creative with it.
It'll be interesting to see. That's one thing. Well, there's nothing good about a lockout, but trying to salvage some entertainment after the fact, though, it will be fun to just kind of see this mad rush into the free agent market for teams that want to kind of complete their rosters, and the Cardinals certainly there too. I think they have a pretty good team coming back, though. I really do, and of course I'll get ripped for being a homer on DeWitt's payroll or whatever that is. But man, they've got a lot of talent coming back, and they need better luck with their pitching staff in terms of health. They could use some more depth there, but I like the lineup and everything that's coming back because it was a really good lineup the final 3 months of the season after they got their outfield in place and to stay without any major interruption. And they're an interesting team. I think they're really good, but I know I tend to focus on what they don't have rather than what they do have, and so we got to try to balance that out a little bit, which isn't easy.
They're a really good team if they improve on what they were last year. They have the ingredients. They probably could use one more reliever just as an option for the late game. But they have the ingredients if a lot of players improve on what they were last year. If they play the style of baseball that led to the 17 consecutive wins, I'm not saying they're not going to do that, but you know what I mean? Like if they play that style of baseball, they're a very good team. They'll be as good as that 2015 team that really stands out. They have that ability. They need health on their side. They need to improve on some things of last year. But if they take on that style of play, they'll be quite strong.
Derrick, that's all I got for you. We'll track you down, soon enough and just check in on things. But we'll be reading you, of course, at STL Today. And, Derrick does a weekly chat that I've said this 100,000 times is really invaluable. And if you're a STL Today subscriber and the price is right for that, you can have access to that chat every Monday. Usually it's Monday, certainly in the off season. So I know I learn a lot from reading the chat. It's also fun to watch Derrick kind of fencing with critics, cynics. I don't know. Yeah, I liked the one a couple weeks ago because you wrote that very, very good and informative and interesting story on how Paul DeJong is trying to, in effect, break down his swing and start all over again, and he's working with a coach, and it was really interesting to read his own thoughts about what's going wrong and how he has to fix it. It's very thoughtful. And, of course, because you wrote that, what were you accused of? That you were doing it for the Cardinals.
Oh,
that this was like a company line piece, like it was ordered up by Bill DeWitt or something.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
that was one of my favorites.
Story that points out that they can't work with a guy at a pivotal point in his career, and that they haven't been able to connect with him on a routine, which he acknowledged. But they, needed some help there. Yeah, that was really, the Cardinals can really reflect positively on that one.
Yeah, that meant that was an obvious indication you really are on the payroll. So he nailed you on that one. So
yeah, well, I guess I'm breaking rules then by talking to you at this point in time. Oh my gosh, the whole chat yesterday was a complete violation then.
That's right. Well, thanks, pal. And again, thank you for that kind note. It was wonderful. I'm looking at it now.
Problem.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too, man. That's our friend Derrick Goold from the Post-Dispatch. I cherish my time as his colleague. We've had a lot of great times together. It's just great writing together as far as working on stuff. So, anyway, that's really good. Just to talk to Derrick. And I still think Jim Hewert's going to come down to, Rob Manfred's got to get his Appomattox courthouse ceremony.
Right.
Or, he's not going to give in. He's got to be General Grant, and Tony Clark's got to ride in on a horse and, hand over his sword and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's just these people are crazy. And I'm talking about on the owner commissioner side. And, one thing I didn't mention to Derrick is another reason why they're willing to make this the players sweat, just basically wagering that the players will crack as we get closer to spring training. And for the players that don't make a lot of money, when you start to miss paychecks, because those paychecks start at the beginning of the regular season, you do sweat, I'm sure. And you get pressure within your own family or pressure just that you put on yourself. Mm-hmm. So I understand their strategy. I just the sad thing is they're doing a lot of damage to the game at a very sensitive time where the pandemic's still going on, and the damage done by the pandemic as far as interrupting the normal pace of baseball and not having fans in the stands in 2020 and all that stuff. The fact that Rob Manfred is going to continue to take this extra hard line because he wants to have, I'm going to mix sports, because he has to have an end zone celebration. It just doesn't seem to me to be a good reason to just continue to damage your game. But part of this, and I didn't mention this to Derrick, part of this like make them sweat strategy, they're very smart about gauging public opinion. And this is something that I've talked about on this show a lot. In spurts, not so much like a big, long, soliloquy or whatever, is that, there have been, I think the Kansas City Royals were one. I know there have been other teams. And if we know for a fact there's been 4 or 5 other teams, we know that it's probably been 20 teams, if not more, where they're commissioning their own fan surveys on this, like, who do you blame and all this kind of stuff. And as always, fans blame the players. It's just remarkable to me. So the owners laugh. Manfred laughs because it's kind of like, oh, look at these suckers. They're on our side. So that's another reason why they're going to continue with this hardcore, we're going to break the union, we want to surrender at Appomattox strategy, because they know the fans surprisingly think that they're the aggrieved party. Interesting.
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about, trying to figure out, okay, where this is going, why they're doing, what's their strategy. I wondered this about in terms of revenue, Bernie, because look, I'm with you. Look, they're just going to sit and watch the players sweat this out. They know what that number is or what that deadline is. And I wonder, Bernie, because we went through the pandemic and the shutdown and limited fans and all that, they know what that number is even more so based on what they just went through, meaning they can wait a little bit longer because they have a better feel for where their dollars are from dealing with that, going, you know what, here's what we learned. We learned we can wait X amount of time longer because we've survived the pandemic. They know what those dollars are. We'll never know because the books aren't open. But I wonder if that just stretches this thing out even more because we went through that pandemic.
I saw a good note in terms of the misconception about what players make. Look, we all know that the top, I don't know what it is, 2-3% make a fortune. We know that. I mean, the Max Scherzers and right on down the line. We get that because they're out there front and center and it's heavily reported on. But it kind of skews the whole thing to where uninformed people, assume all these players are just raking in, buku bucks and everything else. And that's just not really the case, because so much of the revenue that goes into payroll, does go to the highest paid players. I mean, who represent a really small percentage of the overall workforce. So I saw a great note, and we'll wrap it up on this, but it was about there were about 1,500 players that actually got in at least 1 day of service time last season. It's like 1,500 players got about 1 day, at least 1 day of service time, right?
Right.
And 41% of them have in their careers, not last year, in their entire careers. 41% of the players who got into at least one game last year, 41% have not even made as much as $1 million in career earnings. So when we read about the Scherzer contract and the Verlander contract, we can name a bunch of them.
Right.
People seem to think all these guys are making millions. That's just simply not the case, and that's the owners really do have an advantage there, because there's just way too many people that are just off base in their perception of what most of these guys are paid. They really, really are, and I've got some other stuff on that we'll break out at some point. Some really good analysis done by a terrific baseball analyst named Travis Salchik, who wrote about this, and I saved this stuff, and we'll save it for maybe not a snow day, but a rainy day or slow day or something like that. So anyway,
no more snow days, please.
But it was good to talk to Derrick Goold, and we're going to talk to Howard Balzer coming up at 5:00. Before we take a break, and I'm glad to talk about my bookie again, because your team that you follow might have missed the big game, and we all know what the big game is. I think it's Sunday, right? But my bookie's double deposit bonus makes sure that you won't miss the big game, because with tons of exciting prop bets to choose from, there are hundreds of options to make this your most exciting Super Bowl party yet. So sign up at MyBookie now. Use my promo code, which is what is our promo code here? I don't know whether it's 590
Bet 590.
Bet 590. I had that for some reason. The printer didn't offer that to me. Bet 590. Thank you, Jim. To have your first deposit matched instantly, so you can get in on all the action of Super Bowl 56 between the Bengals and the Rams. The only way watching the biggest game of the year could get any better is to get paid doing it, and my bookie gives you everything you need to do that. Get that done. From betting the opening coin toss to the length of the national anthem, that's my favorite. Super Bowl prop bets are a great way for the entire party to get some skin in the big game. And we'll do some prop bets. We'll go over that list as the week goes on. There's a lot of fun, interesting things there.